This is a very personal episode to me. We're watching a tragedy of history begin to unfold. I told you in the first segment how my ancestors suffered. They went on a trail of tears, but now there's a new ideological trail of tears emerging. If there was a tragic color motivating the original trail of tears, I'd say it'd have to be red, as in red skin. If you were that color, you were less than human and forcibly removed from your home. Now we see a color revolution underway, and the color here is distinctly red. Most people didn't catch it. And most people ask, how can this be a revolution when President Biden is in power? Keep in mind, he's not in power. The Constitution is. He's just acting out his constitutional office. But he's going beyond that. And he had this big speech in Philadelphia with all the symbolism, the red light, the military standing behind. He even that day used threats of using an F-15 against the American people. Did you hear him? He said, you might have an AR-15, I've got an F-15, you can't take on government. By the way, his threat itself was a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. The military is not supposed to be used against the American people. And the military is not supposed to be used at political events. But he used the Marine Corps band earlier in the day, and then he had the military standing behind him when he gave a clearly political speech. Everything was planned and staged. No detail from the White House is left unintended. This was purposeful. This is an assault on the Constitution. Now, we know the assault on the Constitution began with COVID under vaccine mandates. They've talked about court packing. They've talked about changing election laws, denying parental rights, demonizing the political opposition. They basically said, go along with this plan or get out or go to a concentration camp. Now, they don't use the term concentration camp yet. Now, this is a plan that's been in place since the 1930s. I mentioned before, I've got a new book out. It's called According to Plan. That's the title. In this book, it covers the 45 goals of the Communist Party USA. Now, I know about this because I hung out with the guy that wrote this book, The Naked Communist, where he outlined the 45 goals, and then they were put in the congressional record, and I think in 1963. We have two enemies. We have an external enemy and an internal enemy. The external enemy is the Chinese Communist Party. There's no question about it. They are the biggest threat that we face, and we cover them a lot in the economic war room. They want to impose an Orwellian nightmare on you and the entire world. Now, the internal enemy, they're also foreign, but they're also domestic. They're a globalist enemy, like the World Economic Forum, or ESG, which we talk about, environment, social governance. This is like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World nightmare. If you haven't read Brave New Worlds in high school, go back and look at it, and you'll see a lot of what we're facing today from the Democratic Party and the progressive leftists, the Marxists, fits in line with that. Now, what we're facing, it's tough. Environment, social governance doesn't sound so tough. In fact, everything they're pushing sounds simple. And it sounds science-y, like electric cars. But they want to demand an all-electric fleet and make it illegal for you to use a gasoline-powered car. I want to ask you, how could we have only electric cars without allowing for new power plants? Because right now, the number of electric cars on the road is taxing the electric grid as it stands, and yet they want everybody to have an electric car and no more gas-powered cars. How can you do that unless you're going to put online new power plants? And what do you do about the mining problems? Lithium and rare earth minerals, they're really hard to obtain, difficult for the environment to dig up pound after pound of lithium so you can make the batteries. And then when you do that, you create an electric car that depends on a certain battery. Well, when that car is 8 years old, for example, the battery will cost more than a new car to replace it. In fact, there are reports on the internet, look them up, even Snopes will say it's true, $30,000 for a Chevy Volt battery, and that's a car, a Chevy Volt, with 70,000 miles on it.